Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful for You channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The familiar, sun-drenched confines of the Forrester Creations office felt like a cage, the air thick with the cloying scent of expensive perfume and unspeakable betrayal. Liam Spencer, his world having just been atomized, stared at Hope Logan, the woman he'd loved, fought for, and was finally poised to marry. The diamond ring in his pocket, once a symbol of a hard-won future, now felt like a shard of ice against his skin. The words she had just spoken, "I'm pregnant," which should have been a cause for joyous celebration, instead hung in the air, poisoned by the unspoken calculation in her eyes and the terrifying, inevitable timeline clicking into place in his mind. "I can't marry you." The declaration wasn't a shout, it was a quiet, devastating verdict, ripped from the depths of his soul. He saw the shock, then the defensive anger, flash across Hope's beautiful features. "Liam, what are you saying? This is our baby. Our miracle." But Liam was already shaking his head, a bitter, hollow laugh escaping him. "Our miracle?" he repeated, the words laced with a pain so profound it was physically crushing. "Hope, look at me. Look at me and tell me that this child you're carrying is unequivocally, biologically, mine." The silence that followed was more damning than any confession. It was filled with the ghost of Thomas Foreigner, with the memory of her recent, intense, and emotionally charged connection with the man who had been both a tormentor and a tantalizing temptation in their lives. He saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the one she quickly tried to extinguish with righteous indignation. "How can you even think that? How can you tarnish this moment with your paranoia?" she cried, her voice trembling with a blend of genuine hurt and performative outrage. "It's not paranoia, Hope. It's pattern recognition." Liam shot back, his voice rising for the first time, his composure shattering. "It's history. It's you, once again, being drawn into Thomas's orbit, telling me it was nothing, that it was just work, that I was imagining things while he looked at you like you were his entire universe and you didn't exactly push him away, did you? You let him in. You let his admiration, his obsession, fuel something in you. So, you stand there and you tell me, with absolute certainty, that there is no possible world, no conceivable chance, that this baby is his. Because if you can't," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "then this isn't my child. And I will not. I cannot walk into another marriage, another family, built on a foundation of lies and maybes." The scene was a masterclass in the slow-motion collapse of a relationship, a brutal dissection of trust that had been fractured one too many times. Hope's tears were real now, born of panic and the terrifying realization that her carefully constructed future was crumbling before her eyes. She reached for him, her hand fluttering in the space between them, a bridge he was no longer willing to cross. "Liam, please, we can get a test. We can know for sure. Don't do this. Don't throw us away." But for Liam, the damage was already done. The mere existence of the question, the plausible deniability that would hang over this pregnancy for months, was a prison sentence. To him, the ultimate betrayal wasn't necessarily the act itself, but the shadow of doubt she had allowed to fall over their lives yet again. "You don't understand," he said, stepping back, his posture rigid with resolve and heartbreak. "The fact that we even need a test, that this is even a question, that's the problem, Hope. That is why I can't marry you. I won't spend my life, and I won't bring a child into this world, wondering if every smile, every milestone, is built on the most fundamental lie of all." He turned, the finality in his movement as stark as his words, leaving her alone in the opulent office, the specter of Thomas Forrester and the devastating consequences of her choices now her only companions. The fallout was immediate and radioactive. Liam's retreat from the Forrester mansion wasn't just a physical exit, it was the slamming of a door on their entire shared history. He didn't go to Steffi, not at first. He went to the one place he could always think clearly, the cliffs overlooking the Pacific. The wind whipped around him, a fitting echo of the tempest raging in his soul. He replayed every moment, every instance where Hope had defended her time with Thomas, every reassurance that had felt, in hindsight, like a carefully constructed lie. The pregnancy should have been a beacon, but all he could see was the shadow of Thomas Foreigner cast long over it, a shadow Hope had willingly, or at least negligently, allowed to fall. Meanwhile, a frantic Hope was not alone for long. Her mother, Brooke, arrived, drawn by the telepathic distress signal only a mother can sense. She found her daughter crumpled, the glittering engagement ring a cruel mockery on her finger. "He left, Mom," Hope sobbed, the words barely coherent. He thinks the baby is Thomas's." Brooke's face, a canvas of a lifetime of her own romantic battles, hardened with a familiar, protective fury. "Oh, honey, no. He's wrong. He has to be wrong." This is Liam's fear talking, his inability to see past his own history with Steffi and his jealousy of Thomas. But even as she comforted, a sliver of her own, deeply ingrained dread took root. The Logan women's curse, the perception that they were destined for scandalous, complicated love lives, seemed to be rearing its ugly head once more. She vowed to fight for her daughter's happiness, to make Liam see reason, setting the stage for a brutal confrontation between her and the man she once considered a son. But the news, as it always does in Los Angeles, traveled at the speed of light. It didn't take long for Steffi to hear the whispers. Her initial reaction was a complex cocktail of vindication, pity, and a fierce, resurgent love for the man she had never truly stopped loving. When Liam finally appeared at her door, his face a mask of utter desolation, she didn't say, "I told you so." She simply opened her arms. "I'm here, Liam," she whispered, her voice a steady anchor in his chaotic world. "You don't have to go through this alone." In the warmth of her embrace, the stark contrast to Hope's perceived betrayal was absolute. Steffi represented certainty, a past where paternity was never a question, a safe harbor from the storm Hope had created. The drama, however, could not be contained to the Spencer-Forrester-Logan triangle. The revelation reached the one man whose entire existence now hinged on its outcome, Thomas Forrester. When the news hit him, a terrifying, almost beatific stillness settled over him. He was in his design studio, a sketch of hope, always hope, laid out before him. His father, Ridge, had been the one to deliver the bombshell, his voice heavy with a father's dread. "Hope is pregnant," Ridge said, watching his son carefully. "And Liam has left her, believing the child is yours." Thomas didn't smile. He didn't gloat. Instead, a profound, unsettling light ignited in his eyes. "She's carrying my child," he said, the words not a question but a prayer. "My baby." All the years of obsession, of manipulation, of being pushed to the periphery of Hope's life, suddenly had a divine purpose. This wasn't just a second chance, it was a permanent, biological tether to the woman he believed was his destiny. He immediately went to Hope, not with arrogance, but with a terrifying, newfound sincerity. "Hope, I heard," he said, his voice soft but fervent. "Let me be here for you. Let us be here for each other. I don't have doubts. I have faith. This baby is a gift. Our gift." His presence became a constant, quiet pressure, a reminder of the alternative future Liam had rejected. He began speaking of nurseries and names, weaving a reality that was both seductive and suffocating for Hope, who was now caught between the man who had abandoned her and the man who would never let her go. This set Ridge on a collision course with nearly everyone. Torn between his son, whom he desperately wanted to see stable and happy, and his daughter, whose life was unraveling, he became the epicenter of the conflict. He pleaded with Thomas to be cautious, to give Hope space, even as a part of him dared to hope that this could finally be the thing that settled his son. Simultaneously, he confronted Liam, the father-son bond they'd shared straining under the weight of his daughter's heartbreak. "Liam, you're destroying your family on a hunch," Ridge argued, his voice booming with paternal authority. "It's not a hunch, Ridge. It's a pattern." Liam fired back, the argument echoing through the hallways of Forrester Creations for all to hear. "You enable him. You always have. You look the other way while he weaves his web around Hope, and now you're surprised when we're all trapped in it?" The battle lines were irrevocably drawn. Brooke and Steffi resumed their age-old war, their arguments over who was best for Liam now amplified by the stakes of an unborn child. Steffi advocated for Liam's right to peace and certainty, while Brooke championed forgiveness and faith in her daughter. The corporate world of Forrester Creations became a proxy war zone, with Hope the Face of Hope line hanging in the balance, its message of love and family now bitterly ironic. And at the center of it all was Hope, isolated and terrified. Every kick, every wave of nausea, was no longer a joyful connection to her child but a trigger for a torturous question mark. She could see the future stretching out before her in two distinct paths: one, a lonely life with Thomas, forever shadowed by the ghost of what she lost with Liam; the other, a life of single motherhood, fighting to prove her child's paternity to a man whose trust she had shattered beyond repair. The idyllic future she had envisioned was gone, replaced by a painful, public limbo, where the most sacred moment of her life had become a source of the most profound scandal. The question was no longer just who is the father, but can any of these relationships survive the devastating weight of the doubt? The tectonic plates of Los Angeles society had shifted, and the aftershocks were only beginning. Hope's pregnancy, once a potential beacon of reconciliation, had become a fault line, cracking open old wounds and creating dangerous new alliances. In the stark, modern confines of Steffi's cliffside home, Liam found not just solace, but a war room. Steffi's compassion was now tempered with a fierce, strategic resolve. "You were right to walk away, Liam," she affirmed, pouring him a coffee, her movements precise and sure. "You can't build a life on a lie." And Hope, her judgment where Thomas is concerned has always been compromised. She didn't need to say the words "I told you so," they hung in the air, unspoken but foundational. Her home became his sanctuary, a fortress of certainty against the insidious doubt Hope had introduced. Every time he voiced a flicker of what if, Steffi was there to gently extinguish it with cold, hard logic about timelines and Thomas's well-documented history of manipulation. She was rebuilding his shattered trust, brick by brick, and in doing so, was quietly rebuilding their own romantic foundation. The presence of her daughter, Kelly, served as a constant, powerful reminder of the uncomplicated, certain family unit they had once shared, a stark contrast to the chaotic ambiguity Hope now represented. Across town, Hope's world was shrinking, pressurized by grief and external judgment. Brooke's mama bear instinct had evolved into a full-scale campaign. She cornered Ridge in the CEO office, her eyes blazing. "This is Thomas's doing, Ridge. Can't you see that? He has manipulated this situation, poured poison in Liam's ear, and now he's positioning himself to swoop in and claim what was never his to claim. My daughter's future." She saw the entire crisis not as a consequence of Hope's actions, but as a masterful, long game orchestrated by the son Ridge constantly coddled. Ridge, the patriarch trapped in the crossfire, felt the walls closing in. His pleas for patience were falling on deaf ears. "Brooke, we don't know anything for sure," he'd argue, running a hand over his face in frustration. "We know enough," Brooke would counter. "We know that Liam has abandoned his wife and unborn child based on an accusation, not a fact. He's choosing to believe the worst of Hope, and you're allowing your son to profit from it." The old Brooke versus Taylor battle lines were redrawn, but now with the next generation as the prize. Thomas, meanwhile, was playing a role he'd never mastered before, the stable, patient rock. He deliberately muted his intensity, presenting himself to Hope as her one unwavering supporter. He didn't speak of love or destiny, he spoke of prenatal vitamins, ergonomic office chairs, and shielding her from the unpleasantness. He began showing up at the cabin with groceries, with books on pregnancy, his presence a quiet, persistent claim. He was building a domestic fantasy around her, one where Liam's betrayal was a distant memory and he, Thomas, was the devoted father-to-be. When Hope would break down, crying that she just wanted Liam to come home, Thomas would simply hold her, his silence more powerful than any argument. He was allowing her pain to do his work for him, letting her see Liam's absence in stark contrast to his own constant, suffocating presence. The public spectacle reached its zenith at a Forrester Collection preview. The air in the room was thick with unspoken gossip. Hope, there as the face of the brand, tried to project an image of serene strength, but her smile was brittle. Liam, arriving with Steffi by his side, created a visible ripple through the crowd. The moment their eyes met across the room was a lightning strike of pure, undiluted agony. Cameras flashed, capturing the entire, sordid tableau, the abandoned pregnant wife, the husband with his ex, the other man watching from the shadows. It was there that Liam, fueled by Steffi's certainty and his own mounting anger, finally approached Hope. "You look well," he said, the formality a weapon. "Liam, please," Hope whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to talk. Alone." "What's left to say, Hope?" he replied, his voice cold, though his eyes betrayed his torment. "Until you have a paternity test that proves this child is mine, every word between us is just noise. I won't be part of another one of Thomas Forrester's twisted fantasies, and I can't believe you're willing to be, either." The word noise shattered her. She watched him walk back to Steffi, who placed a protective, possessive hand on his arm. In that moment, something in Hope broke. The desperate hope for reconciliation began to curdle into a deep, resonant anger. Why should she be the one begging? Why should her child be the one forced to prove its legitimacy before it was even born? Later that night, as Thomas sat with her on her sofa, she didn't pull away when he put his arm around her. "He's chosen his side, Hope," Thomas murmured, his voice soft as velvet. "He's chosen to believe in the worst of you. I've only ever believed in the best." Tears of fury and heartbreak streamed down her face. The two men in her life had become distorted mirrors, one reflecting back a vision of her as a liar and a cheat, the other reflecting a vision of her as a wronged saint. Exhausted, isolated, and seething, the saintly image Thomas offered began to feel like the only shelter left in the storm. The stage was now set for the ultimate, devastating choice. A paternity test would soon answer the biological question, but it could never repair the trust Liam had incinerated. And for Hope, pushed to the brink, the allure of a man who offered unwavering, if obsessive, certainty was starting to look less like a prison and more like the only key to her survival. The real battle was no longer about who fathered the child, but about which version of reality, Liam's bitter truth or Thomas's beautiful lie, would claim Hope's soul. The extent of the destruction is complete. Upon recognizing the extent of the repercussions of those falsehoods, Hope is shattered. Steffi weeps uncontrollably, holding Kelly as if she might vanish once more. Beth weeps against Hope's shoulder, consumed by remorse. Finn embraces Steffi, murmuring, "We will overcome this. Together." However, Steffi, her face buried in his chest, whispers back, "How many times must we bear the consequences of the crimes of others?" In a rare moment of unity, the final act brings all the Forresters, Logans, Spencers, and Finnegans together at Eric Forrester's estate for dinner, despite the heavy sorrow that permeates the atmosphere. Brooke, Ridge, and Taylor exchange solemn glances, acknowledging that their children's lives are perpetually haunted by the spirits of their own blunders. Ridge elevates a glass, his voice resonant with introspection. He speaks gently, to the truth. May it finally liberate this family. However, Steffi is unable to raise a toast. Beth's eyes are crimson, but they are kind as she gazes across the table at her. She ultimately says, "You made the correct decision. Even if it caused me to weep." Steffi stands alone on the terrace in the final scene, gazing at the Los Angeles skyline as the sun sets behind her. The breeze catches her hair. Finn joins her, enveloping her shoulders with his arms. "What are you contemplating?" he inquires gently. She steadily exhales, her voice distant yet resolute. "I am contemplating, perhaps it is time to cease assigning blame to one another for the past," she states. The Forrester home is bathed in gold by the sunset as the camera sweeps out, and Beth and Hope observe from the window. This letter and one courageous confession have forever altered the lives of the mother and daughter. Maybe it's time to forgive. Steffi whispers into the wind, "I forgive you, Beth," as the haunting piano score crescendos.